There was one student, and he took his life. There'll be a disruption and disturbance in education, in the education of women especially.
But I didn't understand that because I'm not a female.
I do not agree with it at all. I think because...
So I'll be kind of a devil's advocate here.
30% of the universities in the UK are bankrupt.
I don't know if they thought through it very well, because...
isolation, loneliness without their families in the UK.
It self-inflicts pain on yourself, to your own economy.
But universities and, the higher education sector was very greedy in that sense, if you look at it.
But I think this very one just cuts throats.
I'm a very good resource for UK, to be very honest with you.
Maybe the thought behind it was not that wrong.
The disappointment will lead to stress, and stress will lead to mental health issues.
If Canada can welcome me and my family...
Is the educational sector not part of the government?
But I was planning to go back to my home country. I was like, I don't care about the money that I've paid, but I'll go back to my daughter because...
They are at fault, the government.
Do you think international students would come to the UK or go elsewhere? Thank you so much for joining today on this special edition of the ISCANET Podcast. So today we have Fajr Ajmal, who has been declared as one of Pakistan's 13 incredible geniuses and have been advocating for youth empowerment and gender equality. She is a strong advocate for female leadership within the corporate industry. Her success story has been featured in 2 Pakistani books and 1 American publication. Recognized for her expertise, she has been invited as a guest speaker and a guest of honor at various prestigious institutions and organizations in Pakistan. Within her university in the UK, she holds esteemed positions, including the Vice President of Education of the Students' Union and Student Board of Governors. So, Fajr, thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you so much, Matthew, for having me.
Drum roll.
Yeah, drum roll. Thank you. So next we have Adobe. Adobe has over 13 years of experience in the commercial and professional service industry. She has worked in the private and public sector in Nigeria and in the UK, delivering change. She's currently a business consultant with FDM Group and a former international student at Edinburgh Napier University, where she secured an MBA degree. Adobe is very passionate about change, transformation strategy, and she's also very, very passionate about inclusion and diversity, and that's why she's here today. So thank you so much for coming today, Adobe.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you so much. Danny is an experienced and career professional who was also a former international student who was turned career rocketeers. Danny is very, very energetic. Danny provides career rocketing advice and guidance to business and law students and graduates. Danny is a personal branding enthusiast and LinkedIn credible mentor with special areas of expertise with the international students. He's a mentor on LinkedIn and encourages students to build a credible online presence. Thank you so much for joining today, Danny.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Looking forward to this.
Thank you so much, Danny. And so we have Barry, who was also an ex-international student. He's currently a PhD research student who is researching on barriers facing ethnic minority businesses. Barry is an associate lecturer and he's also on board with several companies both in Nigeria, the UK, and international. Thank you so much for joining today, Barry.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys. So one of the things that we all have in common is very simple. We are all immigrants, right? And another thing we have in common is that we are all ex-international students. So I'm going to go around the room, right? The government have announced that there's going to be a ban on foreign students bringing dependents to the UK. That is foreign students who are on the postgraduate program, who are not on the research program. So that's going to be starting in January 2024. So what does that news mean to you as an ex-international student? Fajr?
Yeah, so myself also has been, I just told you before that I am here with my husband and my daughter. And let me give you a quick background that I was a senior sales manager in a multinational company before. And in order to become a director, I had to have an MBA. And obviously, why not just go to another country and have an MBA and go back to Pakistan? Because obviously, it's really important for us to have some degree from abroad. And I have been lucky that my husband was very supportive, and I know that there are so many girls out there who really want to go out and study. But if there'll be any problems with the dependency, even though my husband is supportive, he won't ever let me go alone. I mean, let alone that I don't want to go alone, because I have a toddler as well, and I don't want to leave them behind. So obviously there'll be a disruption and disturbance in education, in the education of women, especially who are coming from different backgrounds of different countries, because we all are from third world countries. So I really feel that this is one of the major things that would happen, and it would not only just impact us with our education sector, it will also impact us in, emotionally and socially as well. Because if I cannot go to a country which is desired, I really want to go and study from the UK with my family along with me, then obviously if I can't do that will lead to disappointment, and the disappointment will lead to stress, and stress will lead to mental health issues, and we don't want that. And it's not just the government should actually see this, that it's not just the economy that's getting affected, it's also the mental health, the mental well-being of students as well. So that's my take on it.
Thank you so much for that, Faja. Adobe?
So, thank you, Matthew. So, the ban on the international students and their dependents is a complex issue with potential implications for a range of stakeholders. We're talking about the students, families, universities, and UK economy, of course. So, just as Faja said, the impact is going to be negative for the students who are affected. So, international students who are dependent may now be less likely to choose UK as a study destination if they are unable to bring their families with them. So this would decrease the number of international students who choose to study in the UK, and of course, which will be have implication for the UK higher education industry. And talking about the emotional side of it, of course, I mean, the ban can cause disruption and uncertainty for students who have already enrolled in the UK universities already. Okay, so this can impact on their mental health and well-being, as they may now experience, feelings of isolation, loneliness without their families in the UK, and perhaps affect their academic performance and the overall experience in the country. So, and the families then, back home may face financial loss and emotional stress. So, I mean, you all agree with me that many international students over here are married. Okay, so look at the case where a parent is in the UK studying, and the other parent is back home with the kids. So the one studying in the UK has limited working hours, 20 hours, which, I mean, the earnings from 20 hours can't cut it, really. We all know that. And so let's say the one in the home country is a stay-at-home mom or dad. So how do their income reconcile? How do they show that the responsibility of the family financial obligations at large? So it's gonna be stressful for both parties. So I think what the UK government should do is just review the ban, and that's my own take here.
Thank you so much for that, Adobe. I mean, I'm going to come back to the point you mentioned, but I just want to go around the room to hear from everyone the perception of the ban. Barry?
I think for me, the ban, I'm not sure, and I'll go from a different perspective, in that much, and I agree with everyone as well. I don't know if they thought through it very well, because, I mean, this same government said they're trying to get their economy to about 30 billion pounds or so by 2030, or 35 billion by 2030. And a single cohort of international students bring about 25 billion. Now you stop this, like Adobe said, you reduce the amount of people that want to come to the UK, right? So automatically it reduces it shrinks your economy. We already know what's going on in the UK and Brexit and everything. And now it's more like self-inflict pain to yourself, to your own economy, So I don't know who's behind it. Did they think this through? Do they know what's going on? And like with exactly what Fajala said and Adalbe has said, and to agree with them, they had come in the past. If this had happened during the time, that it could also affect mental health, your imputes and stuff. So I think it's something they should review. But for me, from the economic side of it, I feel it's going to affect the economy, seriously, because we all know. I mean, I heard the Scottish Parliament, I think yesterday, I was watching on the news yesterday, and they were talking bitterly about it. How we can even see in our own, I stayed in Edinburgh. I know how much the Edinburgh, and I'm doing a research on ethnic minority businesses as well, and I know how much international students, ethnic minorities, and immigrants, put into the Scottish economy alone. Even within the Edinburgh economy alone, I know how much. I mean, with statistics and all. So you coming up with such policies definitely would affect the economy, in a bad way.
Thank you so much for that, Barry. Danny?
Thank you. Some great points there from everyone. But let's, for a healthy discussion, for this to turn into a podcast that could go at higher levels, and ministers and people in power can look at it. We need to have both sides and to discuss. So I'll be kind of a devil's advocate here. Similarly to what I was in the last podcast which I did with you, Matthew. We need to look at other things as well, like why this had to happen, and was this the right way to do this? First of all, my perception on this is a very sad thing to happen. This is very sad. I think this is definitely sad for genuine students who wanted to come here and study. This is sad for those single parents who had to come here and wanted to study. Now they can't. And all the genuine people who wanted to make their career in the UK, who had the skills to make it work, who were the right kind of product for the UK market. It's sad for them. They might have families who could have come with them. Now even those students might rethink about coming to UK. It's definitely sad on that end. But then again, you and I, everyone single person knows that how easy it is to come to the UK as compared to some of the other first world countries. And over here, maybe Home Office or the government was not at fault. Maybe they were, but universities and the higher education sector was very greedy in that sense, if you look at it. And they made it very, very easy. Even now, I know a lot of universities in the UK where admissions are very, very easy. Even if you don't have a, English language, testing done, you would come here on a foundation year and you would still enroll in a UK university. And I think that those kind of things where the education sector became very greedy in terms of getting as many students as possible, and then the government did not stop that happening. So they are at fault, the government, but I think the university started this. They wanted more money. University said it's fine. As Barry said, it contributes to the economy. Everything was going fine. But then they became even more greedy. They're like, yeah, let's just get everyone here. And you have to agree with me. I don't know what you guys think. I worked in 4 different universities. I talked to a lot of students. I see a lot of international students in cities working in jobs and all these kind of things. Like personally, I would know at least 4,000 or 5,000 international students in the UK. That's a huge number on a personal basis. I know them and I've met them. So, and I would say that over here in this podcast, in the last 4 or 5 years that I've been here, out of those 5,000 students, I would say 30% of students should have been here. And 70% of students should not have qualified to be here. So we need to look at this from that perspective as well. And that's what the ministers think they are trying to solve, is easy immigration to UK. So, but do I agree with the measures that they have taken? No. So the stuff they have done is basically a blanket ban on just bringing dependents. So the blanket ban, the approach is wrong. Maybe the thought behind it was not that wrong. So maybe what I would want them to reconsider is the way they did it, and maybe find some like just rather than a blanket ban, have certain sub policies and say that in these certain circumstances you could bring dependence. So I think it is a sad thing for international students. I know it was coming. It had to come.
That's a concept.
Yeah, because it was getting misused, the whole, student immigration thing. But the way they did it, I do not agree with it. So that's my view on it.
Yeah, just to add to what he just said, I do not agree with it at all. I think because this ban is going to make UK to lose its ability to attract and retain international students. And of course, in the long run, they will lose the global competitiveness in that area. Okay, I remember when 2015, when health surcharge was introduced, okay, the aim was to get the money to finance the NHS. So everyone coming into the country, in that, category had to pay health surcharge. So they've always had, they've always had a purpose for any changing in immigration rule, right? For the past decades. But I think this very one just cuts throats. That was really, it's going to affect not just the dependent, but the students coming in. If Canada can welcome me and my family, then why can't I go to Canada? Why do I have to consider UK? So that's the issue. That's the long they have.
Just to add here, it is definitely a temporary ban. Sorry to cut you there, Fajr. It is a temporary ban. So I think Adobe, they might reconsider this and change it. This is a temporary ban unless they come up with something new and more robust in terms of a policy. But I think, yeah, you're right in what you said. Definitely, I agree with you with that point that it funds a lot of things in the UK. It adds a lot to the UK community in terms of the, helping them with the economy and the money, which they so need. Now they're out of the European Union, so they definitely need a lot of money to sustain. But yeah, I definitely agree on that. But it was definitely coming. I think I saw this coming. This was coming.
Yeah.
Over to you, Fajr.
It was, yes, for sure. And I really want to say this, that yes, the measures taken, I agree with Danny, definitely. They have put a blanket on, all of that they want to just, restrain some of the students, because there are so many students in the universities. We all have seen that, who cannot even communicate properly. But I think that the measures which are taken are wrong. Definitely, the UK government had to have, a sea of international students coming in because of the UK economy, because 30% of the universities in the UK are bankrupt. So they wanted these students. But rather than, just not having their families coming along, why don't you just start scrutinizing the admission admission process. So for instance, if let's suppose if anyone can join in, not anyone can join in then. Let's suppose if I was coming in, I know that my grades were not that good that I can just go for Oxford, to be very honest with you, right? So because I know that they scrutinize their students. So if they scrutinize their students, definitely, they have a good cream of international students. So why not just do that, with every other universities, rather than putting on, a ban that you cannot bring your dependents? Because I'm a very good resource for UK, to be very honest with you. But if this ban was there before, I wouldn't have been here, because I cannot live without my family or with my daughter especially. People who are single, they can come, but people who are married, they can't. And you're just putting it, and I'll just say that from a female perspective, females cannot come and study abroad without their spouses or without their children. For sure they cannot. So you're just putting a ban on not just this little thing, but you're putting a ban on the studies, or you're just taking the right of education from us.
And I'll to add to what Fajr has said, and Danny too, if you're trying to play the devil's advocate, we understand, and to be honest, if you're going to be honest, when we all did at least MSCs, we saw the quality of education in some places.
I agree.
And it's sad because it's I have siblings in America and Canada, and you'd find out that sometimes you can't even compare the level of education to ours, And I think I've had this conversation a couple of times, I'm sure I've had it with Matthew, whereby you're having, because I lecture as well, and sometimes you're marking scripts of MSc students, and you're shocked. You're shocked, So if you could have like you said, scrutinize it more. Maybe like the way I think America does it in Canada, where you have to do IELTS, TOEFL, GRE stuff, and then people that qualify get into the system, but then they are allowed to come with their spouses, rather than having any kind of. And now let me just ask: is the educational sector not part of the government? Because I don't see him. I think I'm getting confused with this whole thing. Because we are saying that the educational sector or department is the problem, right? Because universities got greedy and stuff. But are they not kind of regulated by the government? I don't know. That just me asking now. So just ask.
Yeah, I'll answer that. Basically, what happens is they are regulated, but they are not, controlled by the government. So regulation and control is two different things. So regulations is these rules you need to follow, and they follow those rules. But when they are bringing in more money into the country in terms of international students coming here, so they welcome that anyway. Yeah, so that's how it works out, because universities, some of them are private universities, some of them are public universities. Even the public ones, they operate separately. They just report to the government in terms of what their operations are. But they, government, the Department of Education, DFE, that doesn't control those universities in any way. They have more oversight over the schooling and collegiate system, but not the university sector per se.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that clarification there, Danny. And I think from what everyone have just said today, right, is that the universities also have a share of the blame on why the government has taken this decision. And I'm sure that we all agree that what Danny said around 30% of students are actually meant to be here, but 70% might not have to be, here because of their level of education. That's understandable. So I think, from my own perception, I would think the university have a role to play in how they screen students coming into the UK, because I understand that the UK wants to attract talented, so they use the word talented immigrants, talented students into the country. So, because the UK are very, very meticulous when they are using their words. So when they say talented, they actually mean, talented. So thank you so much for that. But part of the point, I pick on from what Fajar said and Adobe, let's talk about that a little bit, is the mental health. Okay. I've seen a lot of posts on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn that female students will be very, very much at disadvantage. But I didn't understand that because I'm not a female, right? But it makes sense what Fajar had mentioned, that you can come into the UK and leave your baby back home or leave your husband back home. You're going to be thinking about them. I've seen cases where international students, some of them, as they have the family back home, and they just collected the dependent visa for them to just come into the UK and then go back out. But we're going to come into the statistics of how the UK came into this conclusion. So with mental health, so how do you think that is going to affect the students, wanting to come in after they put the ban?
So I can go first with that because there is this university, I don't want to name it because that case is basically illegal. So there was one student, he was a Nigerian student, and he took his life, I think last week or maybe 2 weeks earlier. And the only reason was that he was depressed. And obviously it has nothing to do with the ban right now. But obviously we can see the international students are being depressed. It's a mental state, anyone can have it. And when you know that you're married, for instance, Matthew, you're married, you are in the UK, your wife, and you don't have children per se, for instance, your wife is back home only, how would you be able, and your wife is basically your partner, so how will you be able to focus only on your studies? when you have, something, coming back in your head that, okay, my wife is there, what would she be doing? Is she okay? Or maybe she's sick. And just by the way, in my class, I have a group. There's this guy who went back and forth to India because his son was not well. He cannot afford to bring them here, but, that's why, he had to just go back to India for a month or so in order to see that if he's okay, because he couldn't focus on his studies. And he's a brilliant man. He's a scientist, just by the way. So definitely, this actually affects a lot on the mental health, not on the females only, not on the males. It's like everybody as a whole. So I think that this particular ban would disrupt and, take the focus of the studies from the students away. I don't think that this would work at all. And Danny actually knows that my daughter's passport was 1 month late. So I had to come up 1 month earlier. And trust me, Matthew, I couldn't stop crying even a single minute of the day. And whoever I was speaking to, I was crying because, I was missing my daughter so much. And what do you think, in that 1 month, would I be able to study, or would I have been actually able to study, or would I have been able to focus on my work or studies? Or I know that, there were some deadlines and I couldn't meet them too. So yes, this actually affects a lot. I was planning to go back to my home country. I was like, I don't care about the money that I've paid, but I'll go back to my daughter because this is not something that I want. But thankfully her passport came back, so it was all good. So yes, it will definitely affect a lot of students' mental health for sure.
Fadia, thank you so much for sharing your experience. I mean, and I think you might agree with me that we from Africa and the Asian community, we are extremely family oriented.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to get that out there. All right. We love our families. All right. I'm not going to say the other side of things. All right. But I know for sure. All right. Because I'm with a lot of Asians. Okay. So we have similar culture, being family oriented. And it kind of makes sense that your daughter was not here in the UK. Your mind is not going to be settled. Mm-hmm. You're not going to listen in class. You are not going to have the capacity to be able to read because you want to be on FaceTime with her to make sure that she's all right. You keep thinking, what's happening to her now? Is she running fever? I'm not there to assist. You become handicapped, but thank you so much for that. Adobe, you want to say something about around mental health?
Oh, yeah. So another thing that could trigger the mental health situation for international students who are facing ban of their independence could be like financial challenges, just building on what Fadia said. Because, then when they come here, they need to cover tuition fees, they need to cover accommodation costs, living expenses. So, and now they face this restriction on the amount of work they can do to support themselves while studying. And, this is where dependents come in. So one person is working full-time, the other person is working 20 hours and concentrating more on their studies, assessments, and all of that engagement. And of course, social integration is another thing that could have also triggered the mental health situation. So whereby, family is down there and they're not able to, to blend in with the social, characters here because they are more aligned to home, socialization. Now, there's no family here to, fill in that gap for them. And and of course, they're going to be faced with dividing their time doing a video call and trying to contact family back home, and as opposed to when family is here. When you go to school and you're going back home to see your family, to see your kid running to you like, mommy, daddy, asking you how was school and all of that. And the cultural differences too is a big thing. Many international students will be homesick because they're away from families and friends, and you can't even concentrate. It just gets you depressed. You feel so alone. And it could be lonely in the UK. It can be so lonely in the UK, to be honest. And so, all of that add to academic challenges too. Doesn't even help matters because you will agree with me that there's difference in teaching styles compared to in the way we were taught in Nigeria, and academic expectations here different, assessment method here different, so some of them may struggle with the workload and the time management, and combined with their family's absence. So they're dealing with a lot of demons, and it's not easy. So mental health situation is going to skyrocket, in the long run, So that's my take there.
Thank you for so much for that, Adobe. Just because of time. Okay, all right. I'm going to have Danny, although my next question was coming to you first. But go ahead.
Yeah, amazing points from Adobe and Faja. And I do think mental health is such a big thing we need to take care of in terms of international students. Just something on a fundamental level and on a legal level, replying back to Adobe. I know that a lot of international students come here with less finances in their hands, but it's so funny when they apply for the study that they want to come here, they show that they have a lot of money to come here and sustain their life. So this whole point of that, let me have my husband here, he'll earn 40 hours, I'll earn 20 hours. That's a very, very weird point in terms of legalities, how the UK education market should work.
Yeah.
So I know it helps. I know I was on the same boat. I know, but on a legal, on a standing, it has no value at all, because they say we are not allowing you to come here and earn and then study. They are saying come study, prove your value, then become part of the economy, get the skilled worker visa and all those things. So I know it helps when somebody is here with you. And on another end, let me talk to you. I know a lot of families here. As I said, I talk to a lot of students. Then, there's a single student whose mental health is really bad. But then there's a student who has a family here, and now getting family accommodation is the next level problem as well. A single student get a simple room, but the family accommodation costs more. It's much more expensive. So whereas I agree having the family together, it's good for mental health, but then again, it has some other end as well. That when you can't even imagine, if I know my family is back in Pakistan, but is happy, at least is happy and is sustaining a good life, rather than I bring them here and then they're suffering with me. We're not even getting an accommodation to live together, and my wife is not being able to get a job. And I know a lot of families where people are not that skilled. The spouses are not that skilled. They end up working in care homes, and even that would come after 4 or 5 months of them being here in the UK. So they suffer a lot. Yes, they'll suffer together. So you would say, make a point here, let's suffer together. It's better to suffer together than to suffer alone. But if you ask me, if my wife and kid has to suffer here without a job in a bad accommodation, I would rather keep them there. So I know mental health improves while they are here if they are in the right conditions. Hence, they shouldn't be looked at, spouses, dependents should not be looked at as money-making machines. That's what I think. They do contribute, but you cannot sell this point to the government and say, why I need my dependents here? Because I need money from them and they need to earn and sustain our life. That's not a very good point for us to put across. But I know that is the reality, Adobe. I do agree. We have done it. I've done it. Everyone has done it. But that should not be something we should be pursuing.
Okay, sorry.
So let me come to you. Sorry, Adobe. So let me come to Danny. So Danny, what kind of point do you think we should put forward to make the government aware that having our dependents here in the UK is very important to us as a community?
I think we should definitely talk about the cultural element here.
Okay.
The UK's culture is very different to all the cultures we come from. So our families, as you said, Matthew, is very important to us. So having them here, that element really contributes. Then all the other amazing things that Adobe said, when you are busy doing your assignments, coursework, you need somebody behind you and beside you. So making those kind of points where how it contributes positively to our mental health, not the financial point, because that's something we prove to them that we have the money to come and study here.
Yeah.
Then I see a lot of students, I help students, they ask me, Danny, can you please write me an application for delaying my fees or something? I'm like, why did you come here in the first place when you did not have the money? You are already putting yourself into, I would say man-made pressure. You just made it for yourself. Why did you put yourself under that? But there you go. But I think the case we could put in front of the government is to, if they want to have a ban, do not have a blanket ban, make it temporary, and then make sure the right kind of people would be able to get their dependents here because of all the benefits that we have mentioned in this podcast, which is the mental health benefit, having somebody to support you, a different education system, how to deal with that, and that you would miss them and all of those things. And yes, that particular person, your husband, your spouse, your wife would contribute to the economy as well. and use some numbers to back that up. But never ever make the financial case about yourself. Oh, I need money, that's why I need them.
Yeah, just to add to what say something about the mental health thing, and that's from like a personal experience. I had to travel. I'm just saying, just in case this had happened, maybe like when this whole thing started, maybe in January. So my very good friend's wife came in 2 weeks ago, from Nigeria for school in MSc as well, and she's due, I think, sometime. Maybe like so. They've been trying to get a house, like for God knows, probably like for months now. I know the way it is. They tell you to bring proof of funds, proof of this. We've tried everything from back home, it's not working. We've tried from here, it's still not working. So I literally had to fly to London last week to help her get into the system. We had this other friend that is married. They had an extra room, so we got that to stay there. And right now, when I left London, we've been going, trying to get a house, unless, a place for husband's visa is yet to come out and all of that. So some days he calls me, he says that, his wife is not, but she's also pregnant. It's affecting her. She has to move so many miles to go to school, and go on the train. And you know the way London is, man. I can't even stay in London.
Me too. I just can't.
I cannot even stay in London. I go to London for 3 days and I'm running back to Scotland.
Yeah. I love it here in Scotland.
So, when you guys in England, I think the grace of the Lord is on you guys. But so, and she complains. I spoke to her just yesterday, and she's crying, because she has to move. She's not been able to sort her accommodation out and everything. So, and I feel that pain, And I'm not a woman. I've never been pregnant, but I can imagine all of this. And imagine now you have a ban, and you're saying that husband cannot come in. That just affects her totally. Mm-hmm. So that could also be something we can sell, because do you expect her to go and look for a house on her own? As a pregnant woman. Imagine that happening in winter. Not summer, like in winter. Yeah, but so it's sad, and I feel like these are things they should think about before just throwing on those blanket. Let's say, yeah.
Let me open the floor for Faja and Adobe just for 1 minute because of the time. Because Danny and Faja we have to go for prayers by 1. Okay, so and I don't want you guys to be late for that for any reason. Okay, so. I'm just going to give you both 1 minute to add to the point that Barry and Danny has mentioned.
Yeah, so as just Barry mentioned, he used the word sell. So it actually just, wakened up my inner salesperson. I think the only things that we can sell right now to the government is definitely, the mental health. Let's just put an umbrella on that, and we can talk about different things in it. And what I feel, and I said this before as well, I'll say it 1,000 times more too, that you are actually restraining the female students who want to study, who want to build up their careers, and you're not letting them come in. So I think here we can also talk about this and talk about the right to education for everyone equally. As a person, as a professional myself, I chose UK because it has just 1 year of MBA rather than every other university in different countries are 2 years. So yes, if not UK, other countries, then it's 2 years. I don't want to waste another year and I don't want to have a gap of another year too, right? So I think that these are the 2 main points that I have actually gathered from all of our discussion today. Yes, I do not believe that it's something good that they have done, or even if I look from their perspective as well, because I really think that they have to scrutinize all of these things, the accommodation issues, because of all the immigrants coming in, and there's a hate for immigrants in the home, in the locals basically. Because obviously there's not much place wherever they're going. They can, they're looking at the immigrants. They're not looking at, us as really potential, we can say, someone who can actually be a part of their economy or be a part of their culture or be a part of their country. So I think, yes, that's where the hate is also coming from. So yes, for that, they have to scrutinize it. Just make sure. I know that there are so many students, as just Danny said, and I think I'm repeating myself here, who are not at all, I'm sorry, not sorry, but not capable of coming here as well. They do not know. And, there are so many misconduct cases as well that they're not even doing their own assignments. So for those students, I think, which are not the genuine students, just scrutinize them and do not just lift up the ban. Do not even, bring the ban in the first place. That's what my take is.
Thank you so much for that, Faja. Adobe?
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. I think despite the very tough situations, that these international students are up against when they come here, I think the benefits that they would derive from, just being in this country are enormous. So at that point, they're not thinking of, okay, how am I going to foot the bills when I bring my folks in? And, there's free health, not free, there's, free health service somehow, and there is a free education for your younger ones too. So, and there is a quality education, there is diverse cultural experiences, there is career opportunities, there's personal growth, there's access to support services, there's opportunity to travel. They're enormous. I mean, you could agree with me in Nigerians here that it is even cheaper and easier to travel within European countries than it is to travel within African countries.
Even within Nigeria.
Yeah. So they're enormous, and people wouldn't mind. They'll be, okay, I'll rough it out in the first 2 years, then stabilize. And of course, with my dependents, we can, build a healthy income and take it up from there. So,
all right, thank you so much for that, Adobe. And I think I'm just going to throw this question out to everyone. Do you think if the government pulls through with this plan, do you think international students would come to the UK or go elsewhere? So who wants to go first? Danny?
Perfect. I think international students would, they were still there even before, and they would still come to study these courses anyway, because at the end of the day, they know that they have, because right now this whole policy is very vague. So you do not know, there is a blanket ban on this, what's happening in terms of the postgraduate visa, which is the graduate visa that they get for 2 years. It might change. So you never know, they might come up with a new policy, something along the lines of, you don't bring your dependents on the student visa, you go on the graduate visa, you get a job, show us a proof, bring your dependents. I think that would be a great model. That would be a very great model, because then they can come and study, because get over with the degree, because they can just work 20 hours, and after that they get a full-time job for 2 years. They bring my folks here. So I think even if they pull through, something along these lines would happen. There would be more iterations of the policy before they implement it, so it would have a very different shape, I think, when it would be implemented in January. But if it gets implemented in the current shape and form, students will still come, because look at it, Matthew, it still would be easy to come to UK. Like, okay, let's just live 2 more years without my family, then bring them here on a skilled worker visa, right? So on a skilled worker visa, you could still bring them here, right? So they'll be like, okay, it's fine, let's live without. I know the numbers would go down comparatively, but students would want to come to the UK. They want a British degree, they want to be here, so they'll still be here. Numbers would go down, but not that much. But yes, the mental health implications are huge, and students do not deserve this. But I would definitely say this, one of the last things I would say, that it is these students plus the universities that brought it upon themselves by themselves. And because they applied for the role, applied for coming to the UK, and universities allowed them to be here. And then the other students who were really, really meant to be here, they are suffering more because of this. So hence, I think the policy is sad and bad in the current shape and form, but I know and understand why it was required, and why it can benefit the genuine students in some shape and form. But it has to change.
Yeah. To build on what you just said.
I'm so sorry. I just want to say one thing here. I'm so sorry, Dobby, but I really want to say one thing. I 100% agree with Danny on this. 100%. But what I think is that in this case, you guys, the government is narrowing down the people who they want to come. So for instance, as Danny said, that it's okay for you guys to come for and be separated from your families for 2 years. It's okay for you guys, you males. It's okay for you, not for females like me. Even if I was, even if I didn't have a daughter, even if I was just married only, I had to be with my husband. It's not something that my husband would allow me. And in Islam and in you have to take permission from your husband. Right? Your husband should have a say in that. It says, and obviously you also have a say. You have your own things as well. So I had to take a permission from my husband in order to come here. And for 2 years, if he'll be like, oh, dude, you're going for 2 years? Why? Right? So you're narrowing down that number. You're not actually looking at the female from the female perspective as well. I 100% agree what Danny said. I do agree. I do understand as well that, yes, this was needed. But you have to be considerate about the female students as well. So, yes, I don't think that, there is any there is no middle point right now here. I think that this is just bringing the women down.
Thank you so much for that. Because that still boils down to, is their decision inclusive or not?
Yes.
And it doesn't have the right representation, But yeah, I'm just going to allow Adobe and Barry just for 1 minute because Danny and Faja would have to go very, very soon. I don't want them to be late. I know how important that is, it's also important to us too, So, but yeah, I'm just going to give Barry and Adobe 1 minute and then we can close this.
Okay, thank you. So I also think that the implications of the ban will depend on how it is implemented. So we are all waiting to see what they have to say about it. But families of international students may be hesitant to recommend UK as a study destination in the future, that's for sure. Okay.
Yeah.
And other challenges also boil down to the visa requirements. It's a long, daunting process when you want to, go through apply to UK, fill up that requirements and all that. And even the changing policies. The policies are just changing. Every year they change policies. So there's uncertainty. You don't know what's coming up next year. You don't know what's coming in 2 years' time. And there's limited work opportunities too for students that are here. So those are going to build up to why students may say, no, I'm looking to Canada or USA, for instance.
Thank you so much for that, Adobe. So Barry, I'm just going to give you 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'll agree with Adobe as well. Definitely to affect people coming in, because look at it. Why did people start moving into the UK within the last 2 years? Because policy changed. There was post-study. There was the health issue that you could, that's why people came. So from the Nigerian perspective, I know there was a point where people were not going to the UK. A lot of people went to Ukraine, Russia, because they had cheaper education. And now with countries like Canada even changing their point-based system, drop their points down. And change their policies too. A lot of people are trying to, look at the Canadian route, through PR routes and stuff. So if the UK don't look at this whole thing well, definitely it's going to affect them one way or the other, because people are going to have more options. Maybe not Ukraine, but maybe other EU or Canada. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Barry. Fantastic, view. I'm just going to spend just next 1 minute so that Faja and Danny can go to pray. So what I've seen online and what some couple of students are saying to me, some prospective international students are saying to me, is that they are considering going to Canada and US. So that is the noise now, and Australia. So they are asking me for advice on those 3 countries. I don't know anything about that. So for me, I think the numbers are going to go down, no matter how easy it is to enter the UK, because where we come from, they think about long term and not just the short term benefit. So I feel that the numbers is going to go down. The above 40 billion that the international students bring into the economy is going to go down drastically. But like you said, they should still go and get further data and consider it. But in a nutshell, thank you so much, guys, so much for coming. I'm just going to release Danny and Faja. So thank you so much for coming today, and it was very, very insightful, and I know the listeners are going to also find it very, very insightful. So thank you so much, and have a nice afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.